Love, exciting and new.
Hello, Hannah Waddingham here. Have you seen the fabulous new Sun Princess? World-class entertainment, exceptional dining, and the greatest pizza ever.
It's a love.
Don't miss our Come Aboard sale with up to 40% off and free room upgrades. Visit princess.com or call your travel advisor to book. Princess Cruises. Terms and restrictions apply. Offer ends 2/28/25. Ships of Bermudan and British Registry.
Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmurz Day, February 24th, 2025. On the show today, news, listener questions. Then in our main segment, Jim and our special guest, Jim Shull, continue the history of Disney's upcoming Lakeside Lodge DVC resort. Let's get started by bringing in the man who says that your bed is a shelf for when you're not using your body. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
It's going well, Len, but if we extrapolate further on that concept, bunk beds are basically a bulk storage system. And you got two or more siblings who
The idea of body shelves.
No, yeah, well, I'm going to use their bodies for the next hour. And a baby's crib, well, Len, let's be honest, kind of the human equivalent of a veal pen. I mean, you got something on the young side, you're putting a lot of time and effort and money into raising. And
you feed it milk? You feed it milk?
There we go. And you don't want it wandering away, which is why you put bars up around its bed. I mean, shelf. And finally, Len, interesting little twist on the story. Do you remember that episode of The Twilight Zone where the aliens land and they're clutching that massive tome that has "To Serve Man" on the cover? And
To Serve Man, yes.
There we go. And the twist ending, spoiler alert, is that To Serve Man is actually a cookbook. Well, Len, turns out I have a copy of that book here at the house, which is why I know that To Serve Man contains at least 2 great baby-related recipes. So if you're a parent of a newborn and you've grown tired of the constant crying and the diaper changing, not to mention the lack of sleep, if you're starting to think that baby Parmigiana or little baby Scallopini,
like a remoulade, something like that, yeah,
drop me a line and I'll hook you up.
Wasn't it Jonathan Swift who did the Let's Eat People thing back in the 18th century?
Absolutely. Yeah. And Len, it's a lot more common than most people think. I mean, think about it. How many times when Hannah was little would you take her to a family party and some relative would scoop your daughter up and go, "Ooh, I could eat you up"? They never say with a little béarnaise sauce and some pommes frites part out loud, but it's there.
Some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
There we go.
But that's what they mean literally. Yeah, that's it. I'm with you on that.
Okay, cool.
Also with us today is former Imagineer and current social media bon vivant, Jim Shull. Jim, how's it going?
It's going well. I'm kind of thinking about what Jim Hill just said. Is this any connection to the fact that we're coming up to the anniversary of the Donner Party?
Is it really? Is it the Donner Party?
Oh,
It's coming up to that. Yeah. And the true story, the man who sold the Donner Party the map that showed the shortcut through the mountains, well, he was paid a visit to one of the survivors of the family.
Yeah, I'll bet that conversation was like a refund. Is that how that conversation was?
I think it was a little bit more like it was a refund through a Colt 45.
Oh,
okay, all right.
Woof.
All right.
Just a quick question do we consider the anniversary of the Donner Party also the anniversary of frozen food? I'm just asking.
What do they serve at the reunion? Finger food.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, now that we've offended as many people as possible, let's go on with our lovely Disney podcast, shall we?
On to the subscriber acknowledgement. Thanks to everyone who subscribes to the show over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, including Henry Prine, Chris Patzone, Cole Ormsby, Michael Warmer, Michael Espiga Ventura, and Keith Brown. Jim and Jim, these are the Xandarian Ravagers who are constantly trying to catch up with Star-Lord at Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind in Epcot. And while they've come really close a few times, the main issue seems to be that Epcot visitor parking is so far away and Xandarian corporate won't pay for preferred. So Peter Quill's already in the building by the time they take the tram and get through security. True story.
Oh, I love that. Okay.
All right. We
get a real life intrusion Marvel. Okay, cool. All right.
I'm just saying that you have to worry about logistics, whatever you do.
There we go.
Like, there's just no escaping it. All right. On to the news. The Disney Dish News is sponsored by DVC Rental Store. Have you ever dreamed about staying in deluxe accommodations at Disney for a fraction of the cost? If so, the DVC Rental Store connects guests with incredible savings on Disney Vacation Club resorts. Whether you're a DVC member looking to rent your points or a guest who's looking to stay in style, the DVC rental store offers a seamless process for both. And don't forget, they also offer exciting point swaps for unforgettable experiences like cruises and adventures. Check them out at dvcrentalstore.com/DisneyDish. On to the news. All right. News out of Universal Creative that Universal Horror Unleashed, this is the new permanent HHN location in Las Vegas, will open August 14th, 2025, and tickets are on sale now. I included a link in the show notes. So Shull and Hill, 4 dedicated houses, one to Universal Monsters, one to The Exorcist, one to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the final one is Scarecrow the Reaping. And tickets are $69 for general admission or $99 for specific dates and times. Remember, this location is the one that's next to Meow Wolf's Omega Mart. So tons of stuff to do in that area.
And speaking of which, Mr. Shull and I were just talking about this the other day. And Touring Plan still does a Vegas guide. Is that correct?
We do, and we're updating the content now for that. Yeah, I mean, I've been to Omega Mart on both of my Las Vegas trips, and I think Omega Mart is just great.
Well, again, Shull and I were talking about the fact that this opens on August 14th, and you have a guide to update, and I do an Epic Universal podcast, and we happen to know a themed entertainment professional who could perhaps eyeball this place and tell us what we're looking at. I'm thinking road trip, Len.
I mean, plus we're all destined for hell, so Las Vegas in August is
Absolutely. I'm in the 4 virtues or less line at this point.
Exactly. I'm really excited to see how they're doing this. So they're saying 100,000 square feet.
Yeah, and also themed bars and, restaurants or quick serve. Or do we know what the mix is there?
I'm guessing it's bars and bar food.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
No, I would love to see this as early on as possible to see how it operates and then revisit it in a couple of months just to see how they tweaked it. Because face it, this is Halloween Horror Night adjacent. Yeah. This is the first time they've done a year-round standalone. So be fascinating to see it how it operates.
I'm super excited. Yeah, so the 14th is a Thursday, which means that weekend is probably going to be super packed. Yeah, I wouldn't say no to that if you guys want to do it.
Cool.
Jim Shull, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, what's interesting about this, Len, is I'm not a big horror fan. I'm more the guy who does, put me in the cute and the funny and fuzzy line, but not the horror line. Yet at the same time, this kind of intrigues me because, as we all know, Universal really buries the needle on their food offerings. I mean, I'm sure you've all seen already this week the food offerings being announced for Epic Universe. And so I'm really intrigued to see what they're going to do in Vegas with their food offerings. I mean, again, as we talked about finger foods, anyone?
I mean, Area 15 is only like 2 miles and change from the Strip. I've done it. It's a inexpensive Uber ride. And,
And again, literally, when Shull and I were talking about this yesterday, we thought, do the Meow Wolf compare and contrast, because obviously, this kind of inspired what Universal is doing here. And by the way, I'm also with Shull. I mean, I appreciate Halloween Horror Nights, the mazes, the craft that goes into them. But to be honest, Len, if I want to be frightened, I'll open the Visa bill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The thing that I like about all of the houses is, to your point, the craft. I don't expect Universal Monsters to be especially gory or anything. And when I say the craft, I mean not only like the decor, but like we talked about last year for HHN how Universal last year had varied not only the placement of the scare actors, but also the construction, the architecture of the scare spaces, so that you could get one actor doing multiple scares. And I know our listeners are concerned, so let me just say my facial tick through medication has completely been in remission. So but I mean, this is going to be great. Vegas is really known for themed entertainment. This is just a great fit. Super excited for this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which you bring up a good point in that, because Vegas is a headquarters for all themed entertainment. So Universal has to compete not just with themselves, but with all of the offerings there in Vegas. So this is going to be a really interesting experiment for them.
And plus, it's permanent, so they they can build things to last. Right. Yeah, very excited.
Yeah, and indeed, and Jim are going to be over there in the chicken line because we want to be amazed, but no, please do not spit blood on us anymore. We've had our weekly fill of that. So to see how they deal with the different markets and the demographics for the audience, be very interesting experiment. So, yep, I'm on board to get there as soon as possible when they open in August.
Cool.
All right, on to Walt Disney World with news. Disney's entering the virtual queues today, February 24th, at Tiana's Bayou Adventure and Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. Both of them had virtual queues in place since opening, and in the case of Guardians, we're coming out. We would have been 3 years in May, so that's a long time coming. Also, Guardians will open for early theme park entry, and Tiana's, being in Frontierland, won't. So a couple of interesting things here. Jim Hill, I think we talked about guest behavior for early theme park entry at Tron. So Tron's not open for early theme park entry, also in the Magic Kingdom, but we've noticed that there are hundreds of guests who will, at early theme park entry rope drop, just walk over and get in line, basically spending their entire 30 minutes of early theme park entry queuing at Tron to save a long wait later on in the day. And so I'm interested to see what happens for Tiana's. Actually, I have people positioned at rope drop on the first couple of days just to go there and count how many people are getting in line for Tiana's prior to rope drop. So
okay, interesting. Okay, as you've mentioned in the past, something like this can definitely change the center of gravity in a theme park. So at least at opening. So that's going to be fascinating.
One quick thing I will say, though, for guests who are coming into Epcot from International Gateway, it almost certainly does not make sense for you to walk all the way to Guardians as your first ride.
Oh, no. You
should stick with Remy and Frozen ever after. We're testing new wait time models for Epcot last week and this week. And one of the things that the models say definitively, no matter how fast you walk, there's almost no benefit. In fact, it's actually, you end up worse off walking across the park for your first ride. So don't do it.
Interesting. Okay.
The other thing is, I think this is like good news because guests who really, really want to ride these rides can vote with their feet rather than having to pay for Lightning Lane or try and get lucky with the virtual queue. So I think this is good.
I agree. And also to sort of double back to the issue we were talking about last week, your piece in the Wall Street Journal and all that, the notion that this moves your opportunity to actually experience the relatively brand new rides in both parks to the old democratic Disney principle. Like if you actually got online and were willing to.
Are you saying, Jim, that because of something I did, it resulted in lower theme park prices for the American public?
Sure. Let's put that.
You're welcome, America. You're welcome.
Okay.
I'm sure it's a complete coincidence, Jim.
Complete. Absolutely.
All right. Also, Disney got approval from the South Florida Water Management District to move forward with Cars Land at the Magic Kingdom. And that means the clock is now ticking on Rivers of America and Tom Sawyer Island. I expect that whatever date it closes, Disney's going to give us all plenty of time for one last raft ride to the island. And related to that, Disney filed a notice of commencement last week to add more construction trailers over in the old STOL, the Short Takeoff and Landing Airport area, which is where they're putting the Magic Kingdom construction staff. So, Jim Shull, I would guess that this is a sign that things are ramping up quickly in the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, when you start building your project camp, that's a sign that, well, get your tickets for the last ride on the rafts real soon. What interests me about this is that camp is such a long distance. Typically, you want to be as close to the project site as possible for the project team, but putting it way over there in the old airport landing strip area, that's a good long hike for them. So it'll be interesting to see how many shuttle buses there are traversing that route every single day. If you know any of the Imagineers wave as you see those yellow buses go by, they need a little bit of love.
Well, now, just a quick note. What's interesting about this is that I was told that putting it out on the Stowport actually came on the heels of issues they had backstage doing construction on Tiana. It just turned out that when they had a bunch of trailers backstage there, it made parade operations difficult. Yeah. And remember, you've got a brand new parade coming into this park this summer. So when suddenly it's like, well, we're going to do all this work on Rivers of America and Tom Sawyer's Island, literally entertainment and operations raised their hands and said, no, not backstage. Not again. You're going to have to be someplace else, especially the first summer of us putting this parade out the door.
But let me know, Jim, that someplace else is half the distance to the WDI headquarter project team area, which is located there in Epcot. So, it's further from the construction site, but it's a lot closer to where the decisions are going to be made.
The other thing I was thinking is this location is sort of at the intersection of not only the stuff that's happening in Animal Kingdom and Magic Kingdom, but if you think going west, there's a ton of actual road construction that's happening over the next few years as well. So this might be like the central point, the most convenient central point for all those things, where it's like, look, no one's going to be happy. Everyone's going to have a little bit of a drive. Not playing favorites. This is where we have the space. So it could be the optimal place for all of those things.
So everyone's unhappy is what you're telling me.
Exactly. The bad news is no one's happy. The good news is everyone's equally unhappy.
There we go.
See,
that's a compromise.
another example of democracy in action.
Exactly.
There we go.
Third bit of Walt Disney World news, and I thought this one was super interesting, was that Level 99, it's an arcade challenge room company, is coming to Disney Springs, probably in the old NBA Experience location. So this is a relatively new offering. It's kind of like escape rooms, but with a twist. So they've got 4 different things. They've got themed challenges. And they say there are dozens of them. These little rooms that fit 2 to 6 people, and each challenge takes 1 to 4 minutes to complete. So it's not like an escape room where you'd spend an hour or 2 hours or whatever. They've also got similar challenges, but it's player versus player. And they've got local art exhibits by local artists, and then food and bev. And the interesting thing is this. One of our listeners wrote in to say they were so excited by doing this somewhere else in the United States that they tried to get the franchise rights for a major U.S. city. And they ended up not working out, but they knew a lot about Level 99 and just sang its praises. So this sounds like a really good thing. I checked out pricing. So there's a location in Providence, Rhode Island. 2 hours of entertainment is $30 per person Monday through Thursday, $36 weekends and holidays. They have a 4-hour package as well for $40 and $46, and then all day for $50 and $56. And I know what you listeners are saying. Yes, but how much will Disney charge? I think the Disney Premium's 40% for everything. So 2 hours will be $42 to $49, $50 to $58 for 4 hours, and so on. So for a family of 4, you're still looking at, right at $200 for a couple of hours of entertainment. But that seems to be the going rate for that sort of thing. I put a link in the show notes to Level 99's website where you can see some of the things they offer.
Okay. And this is down in Providence, Rhode Island? Really?
Yeah, it's in Providence, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well,
yeah, next time you're down there. You could.
Well, I was about to say, I owed Nancy a Valentine's Day activity, and as long as it's not an escape room, because we'd probably still be in there.
Oh yeah, no, that's what I like about this. Actually, the first thing that I saw was like 1 to 4 minutes per task. Like that is the attention span of modern America. That is 100% my speed right there. Yeah.
I'm sorry, you said something, Len?
Yeah. What?
Okay.
I was clicking on social media while you were talking. Yeah,
there we go. All right.
No, but that's so dozens of them, 1 to 4 minutes each. So you get variety. You get that like quick adrenaline rush. I mean, there's a lot of psychological components to doing that in that time frame that I really, really like. So yeah, super excited.
Okay.
Jim Shull, your thoughts?
I think it's another example of the fact that entertainment as we know it is changing, because you have this happening, the different escape rooms that are being built and opened. There's an escape room which is being built here at City Walk at Universal Hollywood. But this is a short form. What intrigues me is how they're going to use this old space, because, again, this was not purpose-built for Level 99. It was built for the NBA experience. So how exactly do escape rooms, beer and zip lines all come together with, as they say here, local art? How does this all become the something that is intriguing for a family of 4 to spend their 4 hours? Wait and see. But, again, sign me up to see what happens here.
I will definitely try it out. Yeah. All right. On to Disneyland Resort. Disneyland says that the Walt Disney animatronic will debut as part of the Walt Disney A Magical Life show. Guests will be able to see Walt in his office, listen to the story of his life and how Disneyland was created, and revel in some of Walt's most famous quotes, including, "When you're curious, you find lots of interesting things to do," and "Render not my creation in miniature." So looking forward to that.
Oh, are these the quotes he actually wrote, or the quotes he's been?
I'm just saying, long hallways, utilidors. Guys, don't make me have to say it all out loud.
Okay, all right, okay, there we go.
On to surveys. Our friend Tara sent in a new Blizzard Beach survey that asks this question. Which of the following best describe why you decided to visit Disney's Blizzard Beach? Please select all that apply. And so there's a ton of things in there. Theming. I've never been before. I wanted to visit. No reservation required. I want to stay in the Disney bubble. Rides, thrilling rides, stuff like that. But the top one is there was an attractive ticket/pass offer. And remember that Disney is offering free water park admission to guests who stay at Disney resorts on their day of arrival.
This is true. And the other thing worth noting is a friend of the show, Nate, was just talking about how he and his family, they were allowing cast members in to use Blizzard Beach. And the thing is, well, aren't you nice? You're letting them go into Blizzard Beach in February.
Yeah.
Where the fake ice is right in there along with the real stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's 67 degrees in Celebration today. It's not bad, but it started out at 44. So that water's going to be a little cold. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that Disney could use ticket data to figure out how many people are taking advantage of the new free water park day promotion. So my guess is by asking you to select all that apply, they want to know what besides that made these guests want to go for a swim so that they could then use those reasons to craft the next set of promotional messages in case the offer works out. That's my guess.
Okay. All right. No, I can get behind that.
Thank you for sending that in, Tara. All right, on to listener questions. This one's from Scott Egan, who says, I'm a newer listener and I'm an immediate fan. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to the podcast. I'm a former cast member and have been a Walt Disney World fan since my first visit in 1978. I love the passion and I'm in awe of the knowledge base of you both. I wonder if he meant another show. Anyway, have you done an episode on Discovery Island, a deep dive into why it started, what it involved, and why it ended? If so, could you please let me know which ones to listen to for this, or if not, could you cover that sometime in the future? All right, so Scott, I put a link in the show notes to our April 1st, 2024 show, which was entirely on Discovery Island. So let me know if you need more than that.
Oh, good. Because we're now in today will be the 5th installment of our 2-parter on Fort Wilderness. So when this message came in, it's like, oh dear, Len will kill me if I start on a history of Discovery Island. It's a 13-part series.
I don't know if you've seen the show notes, but I have a James Michener reference later on.
There we go.
All right. From a friend who shall remain nameless about why the Tower of Terror movie isn't on Disney Plus. Remember, we talked about this a couple of shows ago. So it might be because Disney doesn't want to hear from CBS that CBS wants a cut. And here's what our friend says. Imagine you're CBS. Disney licenses your Twilight Zone IP and creates a ride derivative to that IP. And then Disney turns around and makes a movie based on the ride. The movie purportedly incorporates only the new elements created by Disney for the ride and makes no mention of the TV series, trademark, or IP. But still, again, imagine you're CBS. So the series helped make the ride, and the ride helped make the movie. If you're CBS and CBS's lawyers, you're going to say that the movie is necessarily derivative to the series, as it incorporates the theming and narrative composition of the series, whether it explicitly mentions the IP or not. So Disney's got good lawyers, and Disney was obviously comfortable enough with their position to release the movie initially. But remember that having to pay CBS for Twilight Zone, which is an IP that the Japanese public are unfamiliar with, was why Disney went in a completely different direction for Tower of Terror in Japan. And I suspect that not wanting to pay CBS was a factor in why Tower became Guardians at DCA. So whenever Disney goes back to the table to renew the license for the remaining attractions in Florida and France, if the Gutenberg movie becomes something that CBS throws back at them, I can see Disney just saying, you know what, let's just forget the movie ever happened.
Wow. Okay. Just one little bend on the story. In fact, you can Google this right now. If you do Tower of Terror and Steve Gutenberg, literally the original poster for this thing comes up, and pointedly, this TV movie in 1997 was called Tower of Terror, not Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone, right? Exactly.
But at the same time, our friend who shall remain nameless, I think is a valid point.
Yeah.
But wow, that'll be worth looking into. But Shull, you and I were just talking about this the other day in regard to the challenges of doing Twilight Zone, Tower of Terror elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed we were. We were talking about that very thing. And one of the things we talked about was that when the property went to France, well, the Twilight Zone as a TV series was never really in France, never really in Europe, but a portion of it was, but it was rebranded as, I believe, the Fifth Dimension. So as a name, the name has no value to the French. However, the ride did. And let's face it, the ride in France is a clone of the one in DCA. So it was a case of what the French would say is copy exact, pull that drawing out of the file and give us another one of those.
The French saying Lizzie rocks.
Okay.
All right. And actually, we have a listener question for Jim Shull.
Okay.
And here's the question. It's from Alex, who says, what does the average fan not understand about construction projects at Walt Disney World? Because average Joe, a.k.a. me, asks this or wonders this. We see an empty space on property. We should build something in that empty space. We see an empty building in the park. We should fill that empty building with experiences. Why does everything seem to take forever to build? Why is it going to take until the winter of 2025 to open up Zootopia? It's a theater. And there was an expletive in there that I cut out. Why does that need 8 or 9 months? Why is Big Thunder going to be closed for 15 months? Same with Test Track. Why is Monsters Land not going to open until 2027, 2.5 years? I get that there are months of tests that have to be done to make sure this thing operates properly, but it seems to me that they purposely slow walk some of these projects for some mysterious reason. So, Jim Shull, what is Alex missing here?
Well, there are a lot of things that seem like they should be easy, but they're really not. Let's take one that he brought up, which is Zootopia Better Zoogetter.
Zoogetter.
Yeah, what a name.
Yep.
Anyway, long story short, you go in there and you think how simple this would be. We have a film projector and we'll slap a new film in. We'll swap out some animatronics, effects, etc. But then you get into the building, which is actually what the Tree of Life is, a building. And you find out, well, the air conditioning system, well, it's on its last legs. We found some asbestos in the ceiling we'd forgotten about. The carpet, now that we put on the show lights, we realize, oh, it looks pretty awful. And so there are all these things.
The ADA regulations have changed in the last 20 years.
The codes change and on and on and on. So suddenly you realize what seems to be so simple and easy is anything but. And that's the key reason why everything always takes longer than it does. When I did design work at Disney for decades, I would have an idea and people go, hooray, we'll see you at the opening. And then project management would get the idea and look at it and go, take Shull to the back room and, introduce him to our
friend, Mr. Rubberhose.
Exactly. And that's the reality. Now, of course, everything opens and everything, hopefully, fingers crossed, turns out all right. But there's a long journey to get there. And we can go project by project, why that each project seems to take so long to deliver. Like Tron in Florida, where, oh, by the way, that's the swamp they're building in. There's a complication. Mr. Gator has to be moved. And, the wildlife committee says, oh, you have to move the gator. We have to be part of it. Now, some of that I'm making up because I wasn't part of that project, but I'm giving you those examples as things that do happen. So you start out innocently, but then reality steps in, kind of like saying, hey, honey, we're newly married. We want to start a family. Let's have a baby. And then 9 months later, it's,
What were we thinking
What
here?
were we thinking? Exactly.
All right.
Great question, though.
Thanks for that. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim and Jim continue the history of Reflections, a Disney Lakeside Lodge. We'll be right back.
Hey, Fidelity. How can I remember to invest every month?
With the Fidelity app, you can choose a schedule and set up recurring investments in stocks and ETFs.
Oh, that sounds easier than I thought.
You got this.
Yeah, I do. Now, where did I put my keys?
You will find them where you left them.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. After watching this season of the HBO's original series, The White Lotus, this is the tropical getaway I needed. One more pina colada, please.
Hey, you're not on mute.
Oh, I thought I was in paradise. Turns out, it was my coffee mate. Coffee Mate Pina Colada and Thai Iced Coffee Flavored Creamers. Inspired by the newest season of HBO's original series, The White Lotus. For the love of coffee. Try now.
And we're back. All right, Jim Hill, remind me where we left off last week. Was it Eisner just coming in the door?
Yeah, September of '84, and Michael's just come on board, new head of the Walt Disney Productions, and as he's being brought up to speed about everything the company has in development at the time, Michael's shown some ideas for what the company is developing for Fort Wilderness, stuff that they've been considering over the past decade, including a frontier town where guests could stay in rooms up above the livery stable, up on the second floor, that sort of thing. And Michael's response reportedly was, I like this idea, but instead of building this frontier town in Florida, I'm thinking this would be a better fit for France.
That's a wonderful story, Mr. Hill, and it's pretty much true, but there's a lot more to the story that we need to talk about. You see, when Michael Eisner was named Disney's new CEO, one of his top priorities, among many he had, was to expand the Disney company theme parks and resorts worldwide. Now, at that time, a lot of work had been done, but it was not certain that they were going to go and move and build in France, not for the site of the new resort. And it's also worth noting, though, that the Disney company had been circling this idea of building internationally since as far back as 1965.
Mr. Shull's not wrong about this. Walt actually talks about this during Disney's Tencennial. That was the year-long celebration of the 10th anniversary of the opening of the original Disneyland. In an interview back then, Walt, actually says, "Hey, we've just been approached by this group of Japanese investors who want the Disney company to design a theme park for Japan that would then celebrate 1,000 years of that country's history."
Okay, but this wasn't Nara Dreamland, right? This was
no, not even Tokyo Disneyland.
But that's how Tokyo Disneyland started, from somebody coming and saying we want 1,000 years of Japanese history
in a little tiny box. No, it didn't happen that way. The park that we know today as Tokyo Disneyland was built by an entirely different group of investors. That group is called the Oriental Land Company.
Okay, so you said the word built there, but didn't the Walt Disney Company build Tokyo Disneyland?
No, they'd be too easy, Len. I mean, the Imagineers designed the theme park in Japan, and they provided OLC with all of their plans, which OLC then said, thank you very much, and they took them to Japan, and they started to use those plans to transform what was going to be reclaimed land. They dredged it out of Tokyo Bay. And they needed that land because otherwise they'd be building their castle at the bottom of the bay, which is not a good thing. So while the company was deeply involved, the Disney company was deeply involved with the project of building Tokyo Disneyland, they didn't actually do anything. They didn't lift a hammer to build Tokyo Disneyland, which, honestly, I think is a really important distinction, and one we should note, that between Tokyo and Disneyland and Disneyland Paris, there's a really big difference. And that is, in one, the Disney company did not build it. But in France, in Europe, they actually did.
Okay, so Disneyland Paris, not Tokyo Disneyland, was really the first time that the company built a theme park overseas. That's interesting.
Yeah, and they didn't build Tokyo, but they did learn a lot of hard, valuable lessons that they could apply to the European projects. Now, some of these lessons we've already discussed on our show for Patreon, Disney Unpacked. But let's get back to Michael Eisner before this, this becomes the saga of all sagas. So anyway, Michael Eisner comes on board now as the new CEO of Disney. When he turns to say to the team, hey, you know what I want us to do, kids? Let's go build something over in Europe, a Disneyland. Now, WDI, whose job is to build it and design it, their response was to say, wait here. And they came back into the room holding a pile of documents that they handed over to him, which had not just one, not two, but 1,200 possible sites that the company had studied for building in Europe. To say that they're prepared is an understatement.
Okay, so I'm assuming it took some amount of time for them to get through 1,200 possible sites. You know what? Whoever came up with 1,200, they need better medication. But go ahead.
Well, yeah. Well, that's
1,200.
Their brand is. Yeah.
I know, thorough. A plus for thoroughness. I'm just saying. Go ahead.
Yeah. This gets interesting though, because beyond the thoroughness is, well, there's an individual who comes into the picture now. His name is Jacques Chirac, who at the time was the mayor of Paris. Now, early in 1985. Well, Jacques, over his croissants and morning coffee, learns the Disney company is, oh, by the way, they're interested in building a theme park and resort here in Europe. Now, Jacques realizes he lives in Europe, and moreover, he's the mayor of Paris.
And he has bigger political aspirations.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
You're lifting the veil on the story. That's called listeners and viewers.
I know a little bit about French politics. Go ahead.
Viewers, listeners, that's called foreshadowing. But at this point, Jacques, who had been mayor of Paris, and he was well connected because he'd been in that role since 1977. He had a to-do list building and expanding Paris's footprint up to the north, up toward Belgium, where today Charles de Gaulle Airport is open. It was opened in 1974. Having turned his eyes north, now he turned his eyes to the east.
Which, by the way, just want to stress, teeny little problem with expanding to the east.
Details.
I love this because, Shull, when they're constructing Disneyland Paris, people are like, hey, what's this thing in the middle of Fantasyland? Oh, that's just the Maginot Line. Go ahead.
That's it exactly. That's the
it's
point
not a berm,
entirely.
it's the Maginot Line. Go ahead.
Okay.
What I like is, by the way, kids, that's not the janitor. That instrument he's running is not with a broom. He has a minesweeper.
It's a minesweeper. No, which is they had to do it.
They did.
They did. Yeah.
Because
anyway.
again, that inside of a single 14-year span, German tanks came through this exact same piece of land on their way to the city of Paris.
Yeah, but there's no speed limit on the Autobahn, and now you know why. Anyway, long story short, by December of 1985, now Disney by then has signed a letter of intent to build something. They were still developing what the something was, although they knew it was the Disneyland something. So now, the government of France and Disney have agreed. So plans move forward quickly to develop a 5,200-acre parcel of land, which had been beet fields. They're out in Marne-de-Vallée, and it's about 20 miles to the east of the city of Paris.
Mm-hmm. Now, toward the point Mr. Shull's making here, we don't get a formal contract for this project, which nails down exactly what it is and what's going to be done in what phases, till March of 1987.
Was the contract signing where Michael Eisner got hit with eggs, flour, and tomato sauce by communists in France? Basically. And the irony is that the French communists are throwing pizza ingredients at Michael Eisner, right? I mean, that's the funny part, right? Is that it?
It's all about food in France.
Exactly.
It's all about food.
They're not throwing the good stuff. They're not throwing the croissants.
No,
right?
we're not. The day old. We're not
pizza,
throwing
the street
old.
food. Yeah. Okay.
But finally, it was October of 1989, I believe this happened. And that happened to be on the day that the shares of Euro Disneyland stock first became available to trade on the Paris Stock Exchange. Now, as one of the Imagineers who were told, hey, this is your great opportunity to get rich, buy Euro Disneyland stock, I can tell you, not a good piece of financial advice because things went horribly wrong. So, honestly, today, though, I think about it, those eggs that were thrown at Michael back then, given today with the price of eggs, I just don't know what to be throwing at them today. Any ideas?
Yeah, day-old croissants, beef bourguignon. Yeah, so a nice cassoulet. Yeah.
Ratatouille.
Very smart choices if you're protesting on a budget.
It's just good financial advice is what I'm saying.
There we go. Okay.
So, food aside, at this point, construction had actually begun and it had been underway now for 14 whole months. They took out the beets, they broke through the frozen land, and they started building what would become Disneyland Paris. They officially broke ground on the project back in August of 1988.
And immediately went on vacation because it's France in August.
Of course, yeah.
Okay. But Jim Shull, Speaking of project management, who decides to start then? It's like, here are your shovels. Great. Yeah, break ground. Okay, now we're all going on break for 31 days.
And ignore those minefield over there,
Exactly. When you come back, most of this will be clean. We'll figure out which parts later. All right, so how does this link back to the stuff in France, link back to what's going on at Fort Wilderness in Florida?
We will get to that part of the story shortly, Len, but first, this.
Are you still quoting 30-year-old movies? Have you said cool beans in the past 90 days? Do you think Discover isn't widely accepted? If this sounds like you're stuck in the past. Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. And every time you make a purchase with your card, you automatically earn cash back. Welcome to the now. It pays to Discover. Learn more at discover.com/credit card, based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
Here at the Almond Joy Factory, where tropical vibes abound, we use soft, fresh-tasting coconut.
The crunchiest almonds and delicious chocolate candy.
Ah, but do you know what our most important ingredient is? Sometimes you feel like a nut.
Sometimes you don't.
Almond Joy's got nuts and something even way better than that. Yes, Almond Joy is made with almonds and joy.
And we're back. Okay, so it's August of 1988. Construction at Disneyland Paris is underway, and Fort Wilderness factors into this story. How? Why?
Oh, you want to talk about Florida. Okay, I can fill in some of the blanks here, Len. I mean, largely because the Fort Wilderness campground, well, it was built out in, kindly we could call it a rustic setting. I mean, if you ignore the snakes and the kazoo draped out of the trees, it was a place of wilderness. It was a place for people to embrace their nature side of their body. But it also had a lot of very fun nods to the American West, which is kind of gets important. I mean, you could go through the list, Len and Jim. You have the list, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, what? Crockett's Tavern, the Tri-Circle D Ranch. Me personally, I love how the cast of the Hoop-Dee-Doo arrives on Pioneer Hall. You hear Stagecoach pull up. So, I mean, the Old West.
That must have been a very small cast to fit into one Stagecoach. I mean, I'm just saying.
Only six.
Okay. So. Well, double up, guys. Anyway, the reason they did the Whoop-Dee-Doo and all the other you just listed, because everyone loves the Old West. And honestly, the French love the Old West more than anyone else. So with this information in their back pocket, when WDI was designing the Euro Disneyland Resort, they decided to broaden their canvas that they had available and to tell tales of the American West, not confining those stories just to Frontierland, as it had been the case in all the other Disneylands, but to take those stories and scatter them throughout the entire new resort that they were planning.
I mean, I will say this, that the Frontierland in Disneyland Paris is the best and most impressive Frontierland in any Disney theme park. It's definitely the most cinematic. If you think about how Big Thunder Mountain is basically out on an island, you can't help but focus your eye there. Also, Phantom Manor's high up on the hill, right? So you've got the up-down thing to look at. It's and it's all around the river. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I can't argue with you there, Len, about it, that Frontierland being the best of all of them. But also, since you mentioned the two attractions, it's worth noting here that Disneyland's Frontierland is so predominant that and important to that park that it got not one, but two e-tickets when that park opened in April of 1992.
And Len, having just mentioned or used the term cinematic, that's a very accurate description because, again, the Frontierlands that we got at Disneyland Park in Anaheim, the Magic Kingdom of Florida, even the one that was built in Tokyo, those were largely influenced by the Westerns on television. I mean, shows that were hugely popular in the 1950s and the 1960s, like Gunsmoke, Bonanza, Maverick.
And let me pick up here that, whereas the version of Frontierland that the Imagineers designed for Euro Disneyland, that version was inspired not by TV, but by movies, and especially the movies from the director Sergio Leone. Now, he was the great Italian filmmaker who made so many movies that really changed how people saw movies depicted on the big screen. And of course, he made the famous trilogy with Clint Eastwood, The Man with No Name. Now, so based upon all of that, the Euro Disneyland Frontierland went in another thematic direction stylistically. And well, they learned a lot from that, and it expresses itself in a unique and special way.
I love that you mentioned Clint Eastwood and then go into the unique and special way, because they had a Clint Eastwood billboard over the Santa Fe Hotel at Disneyland Paris, right? I have a picture of it in the show notes.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about Clint in his sharpie, his hat, and his cigar hanging out of his mouth. Yeah, that was a very strange take on the American West. Because
that's one word for it, yeah.
Yeah, I was being kind. The Hotel Santa Fe was really delving and leveraging a lot of the mythology of the American West that the Europeans had seen. Remember, a lot of Europeans wanted to go to the West, the American West, but not everyone went there. I mean, one time I had a project team of a lot of French, and we came up to a Thursday afternoon, and I asked them, well, what are you going to do this weekend? And they turned to me and said, we've got a big car. We're going to the Grand Canyon. What will it take? An hour, 2 hours? And I said,
from Los Angeles?
Yeah. Well, they're used to, driving an hour and they're in Belgium, or 2 hours and you've crossed into 2 or 3 countries. So, but they wanted to go there. They wanted to go to the American West. Yeah. So imagine that group driving up to the Hotel Santa Fe, and they park in the parking lot of the hotel. Now, the parking lot isn't just a normal square parking lot. It's spread out in the form of an old drive-in theater, and it's raked. Yep. So you're on a slight incline, and you look down, and there on the big screen, just over the lobby that you're about to enter, is a screen. And on that screen is Clint Eastwood in a scene from The Good, the Bad, and let's say it together, the ugly.
And the Santa Fe is just an odd resort, right? For a lot of reasons, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But the Clint Eastwood's not there anymore, right? Now it's Lightning McQueen and Mater from the Cars movies. So that's
we're still grieving that one. Yeah,
and I'm not sure that makes it any less weird.
Mm-hmm. No, talking cars. Maybe Clint is driving that car. I mean, they do have steering wheels.
There we go.
But I've always said that this Hotel Santa Fe, you just used a term that I'm not sure I completely agree with, but I'll tell you, it was sweet in one way, because it really leveraged all the mythologies of the American West. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Scully and Mueller from the X-Files were staying in the room next to me when I was there. It was also a resort that celebrated things like you had a UFO that had crash landed, into the dirt. And next to that, you had a large stair-step waterfall was cascading off a Pueblo-inspired building. Oh, and there was also, please ignore the giant rattlesnake sculpture outside your room on the way to the food court.
That's left over. That's a tribute to the Los Alamos atomic testing in the desert.
There we go. There we go. Okay. But what's intriguing is you have this somewhat surreal take on the American Southwest, but then you cross the Rio Grande, that faux river coming up from the Lake Buena Vista out of the Disney Village, and now you're at the Hotel Cheyenne, which is this relatively faithful recreation of a Western frontier town.
Yeah, this was Robert A.M. Stern that designed it, the same guy that did Yacht and Beach Club, and then the Boardwalk? The Boardwalk?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was one busy architect. He did the Newport Beach, as you said. And it really is very much a close cousin, if not a direct twin, of that other hotel in France. And, I got to tell this story. So here it is. I'm working on a DLP project, and I'm staying at the Newport Beach Yacht Club. Newport Bay Club. And I was going to leave for California, going home, packed all my dirty laundry in the suitcase. I'm getting ready to walk out the door, and I get a call from Glendale. And they say, on your way to California, well, could you, Orlando's midway, stop there. So I get onto the plane. I'm jet lagged. I'm tired. I've spent weeks in France, and I arrive in Disney World. So I'm set up over now in my hotel, which happens to be the Beach Club. That twin.
Someone in corporate travel did not like you, Jim Shull.
No. But they probably thought kindly, or if they thought at all. But as we said, it's very much a close twin. So I'm exhausted from the flight. I wake up, pass out. I wake up. I open the door, and I start walking down the hallway. Now, I just walked the night before in another hallway that was
Different hotel.
identical. Like the signs aren't in French. They're in English. And the arrows are pointing in the opposite direction from what I knew. And literally there was that moment of panic attack where I'm thinking, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm lost, I'm going to die in this hallway. They're going to come through here with the to vacuum the room, and they're going to find this rotting, desiccated corpse there by the fire extinguisher, and
holding a French map of the wrong resort.
Exactly.
Oh,
good times. Good times.
That's a great story. Okay. All right. Let's get back to Florida. Let's talk about Fort Wilderness here. I don't want to remind you, Hill, but we're 5 parts into what was originally supposed to be a 2-part story. So focus.
Okay, we are just one puzzle piece away from all of this linking up. Okay, so remember,
Napoleon took over France.
There we go. Okay, but the interesting thing, the last piece of the puzzle here, Len, is the Buffalo Bills Wild West show, that dinner show that was hugely popular with visitors to Disneyland Paris.
Oh yeah, because the French didn't have enough baked beans and barbecue chicken in their life. So when Euro Disneyland was developed and the Festival Disney or Disney Festival or whatever they're calling it this week, that's their equivalent of their downtown Disney. And it was there strategically, smartly placed because it was on the transportation hub for that resort. So it really didn't matter. When you arrived at Euro Disneyland, it didn't matter if you came by train, high-speed rail, bus, or even personal car. You would have to see the show building with its huge marquee advertising Buffalo Bills Wild West Show. You walked by it as you walked to the park. You walked by it when you exited the park back to the hotel. And they carefully, strategically blew the smell of barbecue chicken out onto the transportation hub.
That's just smart business. By the way, I love that the French didn't go with medieval times for their horse-based dinner show because they lived through it, right? I mean, basically we want something more. We want something exotic, right? So it's Buffalo Bills. All right,
so they've been on the nose.
Wasn't this bundled into like Disney Vacations as well? Like you stayed a certain number of nights, they gave you like one free meal there.
Oh, yeah. It was one of the things they would do. A lot of people in Europe would plan. They wouldn't come as an individual or a family. They'd come in part of a tour group. And so when they opened their tour package, they'd realize, oh, well, they gave us, air quotes, this free night at Buffalo Bills. So inevitably, they'd spend one of their nights sitting there in the arena looking at Buffalo Bill, real Indians, buffaloes, and enjoy their baked beans and barbecued chicken. Off of tin plates.
Oh my God. And it ran for years. In fact, if it hadn't been for the pandemic, I would bet you that Buffalo Bills Wild West show would still be up and running at the Disneyland Paris Resort. But it closed its doors in March of 2020. And while the rest of the resort eventually came back online, this theater, again, in the Disney Village Disney Festival, whatever they're calling it this week, remains stark.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about Buffalo Bills. That's the final piece of the puzzle. Let's now figure out how Disneyland Paris and Fort Wilderness are connected.
Cool.
All right, so since you asked, here we are on this long journey, like my hallway trip. Disneyland Paris opened in April of 1992, Len, and while the resort became, after it opened, people liked it, except the French farmers who dumped heaps of burning hay at the front door, but that's a story for another time. And then a couple of months after that, they had some, shall we say, financial embarrassment around 1993. And that was built on the assumption that everyone would want to flock to the 5,000 hotel rooms, that everyone who, came would spend buckets of money, and the money they used to build the resort, they got it at a really good, cheap rate. None of those things ever happened. And as a result, as we said, things were lean. But, even though things were lean, the people in Burbank, in corporate, noticed that of all the things that were happening, Buffalo Bill and Frontierland were still hugely popular with the guests. And so that was a bit of information they could tuck away for another time to be used for another project.
Speaking of which, okay, on last week's show, we talked about the Cypress Point Lodge, which was supposed to be this moderate resort that Dick Nunes wanted to have built at Walt Disney World in the early 1980s, which, again, remember, was supposed to be themed as if it were a hunting lodge at the edge of the Everglades.
One of our listeners wrote in to ask if the lodge equivalent of Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, since it's based in Florida, would be doing mullets. For hairdos. All right.
That's
but okay.
funny. That's funny.
Okay. But, all right. So we did talk about that. So but then Epcot opens. Eisner comes in as the head. And then he basically becomes like a patron of architecture, right?
Yeah,
For
he
a
did.
long time.
He did.
Yeah.
I mean, that was an interesting chapter in the history of the company and it's an important one because while Michael okayed construction of the Grand Floridian Resort, which is a huge project, the honest truth is when he walked in the door, they basically presented to him the fact of, hey, we're going to go build this. And, you know, and by the way, you can't make any changes because we're going to build this. See you at the opening. So, you know, he oversaw it, but he really had no opportunity to make design changes to the architecture. Now, entering his architecture patron phase, that was about to change.
Yeah, I'm guessing him walking in and them telling him he can't make any changes probably didn't make him too happy. So, but there were other things there, right? There were other expansion pads that were around Bay Lake, right?
All true. Okay, so and Michael after. I mean, the interesting thing is, remember when the Grand Flow opened, everyone, this beautiful, impressive hotel. So Michael, with his first hands-on project for Walt Disney World, he wants to build something that's even grander. And in fact, that's what's fascinating about the Cypress Point Lodge. As Michael, all right, let's revisit this. And so during the design phase of that, which 89 through 91, this hotel goes from being a moderate to a deluxe. And not only that, but it loses the rustic hunting lodge theme and now becomes this ambitious tribute to the national parks of the American West.
Yeah, if I could jump here, I know that when the Grand Floor opened back in June of 1988, the main building of that hotel had really an impressive 5-story atrium. And you walk in there, it was clear span space, it was 5 stories tall. It was built to impress. However, when Michael was developing and designing and directing the Wilderness Lodge, he said to them, "Hold my geyser water, guys." And because that hotel opened with not a 5, but an 8-story tall atrium, plus a fireplace, so you could warm yourself by standing in it, and your 20 of your best friends.
Exactly. See, I'm old enough to remember the good old days when Disney CEOs had edifice complexes, and we got good buildings out of it. But okay, so the 82-foot tall fireplace, which again you can actually stand in, but also Jim, 2 like huge totem poles, right? Like 50, 55 feet tall. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is impressive when you walk in it. There's no other way to say it. Also, I love how when you walk through the entrance, your view is constrained by a floor above you until you're a few feet into the lobby, and then it opens up like a giant theater curtain, like a movie screen. Yeah. It's a wow from the first time you come through the door.
Well, they used a lot. They used the tricks from theatrical presentation, because you're right.
Yeah,
when you walk in the first doors, it's a very low ceiling. It's also a very dark space. So when you pop out into the atrium, suddenly you notice the light level is really tall. It's really bright. And then you see the totems, you see the fireplace. And oh, by the way, over there in the distance, do I see a geyser?
An indoor geyser. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much stuff to look at. I have to tell a quick story here. When Laurel and I were remodeling our mid-century house in North Carolina, it had a formal Japanese garden with koi ponds. And so one of my ideas, because the kitchen was near the garage, was indoor water feature that went outside. And I think I've told this story before, where I brought our architect to Walt Disney World to show some ideas. And when I mentioned the indoor water thing to me, she looked at me like, that is absolutely the worst idea I've ever heard. Not from a design perspective, but from a maintenance perspective. Like, do you know what it takes to maintain one of those things? And it basically would be like, that would be all you do for the rest of your life, is maintain that system. So she talked me out of it. But anyway.
No. Well, Mr. Shull, you were talking earlier before, as we were working on the show, about that very same thing. How there's the illusion of a stream that starts inside the lodge that then goes outdoors, and just the stagecraft that's involved to pull that off.
The geyser, which is off the lobby, really does go outside the building. It's real water, and it does go outside, and you can follow the stream. It draws you all the way down, and it appears to go down a cascading waterfall, and then eventually, as it hits to the lake, it looks like it pours into the lake. Now, here again.
Right, but there's a bridge. There's a bridge that goes over.
You gave it away. Listeners,
I know the secrets. I know the secrets.
Len just spoiled your day, listeners. But yes, you're right. It goes underneath where that... I think it's also the fact that clear water goes under the bridge and comes out on the other side as, well, a tantalizing green pea soup color.
Slightly murkier, yeah. But still, it's a great effect.
It's all true. Well, okay, so Wilderness Lodge, with all of its amazing stagecraft and design, opens May 28th, 1994. Hit right out of the box. But let's also remember, in the years leading up to the construction of Wilderness Lodge, Fort Wilderness Campground has undergone its own transformation. They've taken a third of the campsites there and dropped prefab cabins on them, where pup tents previously sat in these camp loops.
Right, and if I remember correctly, what we end up with after that transformation was 799 campsites and 409 cabins, right? Mm-hmm. Or, as we call them now, James, wilderness homes.
That we do. Okay, so and not to overlook a big, new, impressive next-door neighbor on the other side of that cypress swamp. Mm-hmm. A deluxe hotel filled with people who have wallets, who, if it were just a little easier for them to get over the Fort Wilderness, they'd undoubtedly spend the day swimming at river country or catching a performance at Pioneer Hall.
But it's still a hike to get there, though.
It is, but... Do you remember the Fort Wilderness Railroad?
We talked about it last week's show, right? The thing that got shut down back in February 1980. Mm-hmm. So this was a passenger train service that got pulled by steam trains, but it went awry. And then eventually the passenger cars ended up as ticket booths over in Pleasure Island.
They did. Yeah. Here's the thing. The steam trains that pulled those passengers' cars, they're still sitting backstage over at Central Shops. And the thinking was, well, what if we were to revisit that rail line idea? Only this time, instead of taking people around the camp loops, what if we had the train run from Wilderness Lodge over to, say, by Pioneer Hall, that sort of thing.
We call it the landliner.
There we go. But better yet, in between these two stops, we build a brand new moderate hotel, which is modeled after the one that Robert A. M. Stern designed for Disneyland Paris. Just to be clear here, the Hotel Cheyenne, not the Newport Bay Club, the one that almost killed Jim Shull.
But I forgive them. There
we go. But again, this is the hotel where you can stay upstairs, on the second floor over the livery stable or the blacksmith shop. And then the kicker, Len, what if at the edge of the parking lot that serviced the guests who are staying at this new old Western town-themed hotel, what if you built the stateside version of Disneyland Paris's hugely popular Buffalo Bill Wild West show? Now, wouldn't that have been an amazing addition to the Walt Disney World Resort?
Yeah, so you'd have a steam train, you'd have an Old West town, and you'd have the Buffalo Bill show. That would have been super great to have between Fort Wilderness and Wilderness Lodge. Shull, did you ever get to see these plans? What was this thing supposed to be called?
Buffalo Junction.
Buffalo Junction, Mr. Shull?
Buffalo Junction, carry the one for... No. And the reason involves how the company was structured back then. Back then, the way it worked was the theme parks were designed by WDI. But all of the hotels, which were outside the berm, as we called it, they were developed and designed by the Disney Development Company. Now, note, the name company, because they were a separate arm, completely two arms, one body, but the arms would fight each other constantly and in weirdly odd ways. Anyway, this wasn't something that continued forever, because by the time they started to work on Shanghai Disneyland, the decision was made to, change the arrangement. So Bob Iger, really changed things a lot by tearing down the wall between WDI and DDC. And so as a result, long story, I became the first creative director, who was an Imagineer, mind you, to lead the design for a hotel in a Disney resort outside the berm. Now, of course, as we all know, I'm talking about the first Toy Story hotel, which is open now at Shanghai Disneyland Resort.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about that on Disney Unpacked, where we talked about Toy Story Land. We should do a deeper dive on the hotel, though, the Toy Story hotel, on a future Disney Dish. That'd be fun.
I would be up for that.
Okay, back to Buffalo Junction, because it sounds like it would have been amazing, but it never gets built. So, Jim Hill, why?
Okay, Len, some of that has to do with the rise of the Disney Vacation Club. Now, you have to remember that the first of those resorts to be built on property, which now goes by Old Key West, that opens in December of 1991, and some 30 months before guests were able to enter that very impressive atrium over at Wilderness Lodge. But the specifics of this story will have to wait till the next Disney Dish.
All right, so my guess is when those 30 months, they get to look at the financials, and they're like Buffalo Schmuffalo, but all right.
Foreshadowing, folks, foreshadowing. Okay.
All right, anyway, thanks to Jim Shull for coming on this week's edition of Disney Dish and sharing what he knows about the Fort Wilderness/Disneyland Paris connection.
Oh, yeah, I'm happy to have been some help. Thanks for having me aboard.
And if you enjoyed the tales that Mr. Shull told today, just be aware that you can hear similar behind-the-scenes stories over at Disney Unpacked, which is the video series that me and the two Jims, with the help of Eric Kersey, do on a monthly basis over on patreon.com/JimHillMedia. Likewise, Mr. Shull has his Disney Journey series over on YouTube, and I've provided a link in the show notes. It is definitely worth checking out. That's going to do it for the show today. You can help support our show by subscribing over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, where we're posting exclusive shows every week. Our latest video is with Imagineer Jim Shull. How about that? On the history of Tom Sawyer Island and the rivers of America, with cave exploration video from Disney Dish spelunker Christina Harrison. On next week's show, Jim and the ghost of James Michener finish up the history and future of Disney's Reflections, a lakeside lodge. You can find more of Jim at jimhillmedia.com and more of me, Len, at touringplans.com. Jim Shull, where can people find you?
As always, they can find me over on X. They can also, moreover, find me on Disney Journey on YouTube.
Fantastic. We're produced spectacularly by Eric Kersey and David Gray, who'll be singing Subterranean Homesick Blues and All Along the Watchtower live on stage with Smokestack Joe and Tired Horses at Bob Fest, a tribute to Bob Dylan's rare and unreleased songs, on Thursday, May 22nd, 2025 at 7 p.m. at the Vogel at the Count Basie Center for the Performing Arts on Monmouth Street in beautiful downtown Red Bank, New Jersey. While Eric and David are doing that, please go onto iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim and Jim, this is Len, and we will see you on the next show.